Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 278, and today's date is January 31st, 2014, and the title of this episode is, Will the False Flag Event at the Super Bowl Get the Green Light? And as we know, these false flag events, they have a go or no-go. We will have to see how this turns out. We do know that FEMA, DHS have been training for this type of event for quite a while. We understand that the FBI is on the ground. They also have a base set up around 6 to 9 miles away. And every time the FBI is in one of these situations, something seems to go down. We saw the Boston Marathon. We've seen, and especially with DHS and FEMA, whenever they are around, it seems like they are just ready and prepared for something to go down. Now, will it go down? I really hope not, especially for the people's sake. If it doesn't go down, does it mean, oh, it's all over and that's it? No. That means they are planning something someplace else, and this was a diversion. Let's get into the economic collapse news. We're going to head out to Cyprus, and what we're seeing out there is that Cyprus has reached a 17.5% unemployment rate, and it's continually rising. Their youth unemployment has reached 40.8%. So we're seeing that Cyprus is having a very tough time. They are looking to get another bailout at this time. And we understand that in Greece, Portugal, Spain, Italy, UK, they are all having a very rough time. Now we understand that Greece, people there are just struggling, and I have a person on the People, which is a forum that there are people there talking about the economic collapse. It is completely free to join. We have people from all around the world talking about different things because I like to get the information from people who actually are living in these countries. And Alex from Athens, I'm going to read something of what it's like to live in Greece right now. And this is from what he has said. Greeks feel more and more the pain of the economic rope digging scarves on their skin. They are confronted with taxes that do not correspond to their real finances. Day in, day out, the Greek economic team plots new ways to rob the last cent, the last asset from the people. Even retroactive day in and day out, new government decisions give a new slap in the face of any intended business activity, while the majority of companies struggle to survive. There is no liquidity in the market, and bank loans for investments are a rarity. The close monitoring of any transaction squeezes the last breath of anyone who cannot afford to meet his obligations in monthly bills, outstanding debts to the state and the banks. Austerity here and recession there. Hardly a Greek would believe that it's all about saving the country by economically exterminating its citizens. And you can see that out in Greece, they are having a very hard time. It is not easy. They are in the middle of a collapse. People are living on the streets. People can't make payments. The government had to readjust how they made their monthly payments and spread those out even longer so they can just get by. And once this thing starts to spread, and I'm talking about the collapse, everyone in every single country is going to have this same type of situation going on where you don't know where your next meal is going to come from. You don't know if you can pay your bills. You don't know if you can stay in your home, pay your taxes. And this is why you need to prep, because when this time period comes, you want to make sure that you have food and you can feed your family. You want to make sure that you have the ability to take care of your family at the time, especially protect them from other people who are not preparing for this economic collapse. Now, in the UK, wages are falling. The real value of British workers' wages have been falling consistently since 2010, marking the longest period in a half a century. Real wage growth has fallen to a minus 2.2% since the first quarter of 2010. Earnings have been pushed down due to low productivity, growth within the economy. And we're seeing this happen every place. People can't get by. Things are getting very expensive. Wages are not going up. They're actually staying the same or actually decreasing, and this is what everyone is saying, especially those people who are unemployed and had a full-time job making a nice salary, now can't find a job, and they're taking a part-time job, or they've taken a full-time job because they can't get anything else, and they're taking a reduced salary. So it's very hard for these people to make it through, and this is why in the UK people are diving into their savings to make ends meet, and they're getting payday loans to pay for their rent or mortgage. Now in Spain, the banks are seeing more bad loans, and they are surging, and they have risen to another 20% or so in non-performing loans. And this is just getting out of control right now. We're seeing the banks, they are having a shortfall. They're not getting the revenue coming in from these loans. They're reporting more and more bad loans. And this is happening in every single area wherever there's a private Western central bank. Yes, there are countries that are taking a little bit longer, like Germany, but it always starts off with certain countries, just like the real estate market in the United States. Every place didn't see the turmoil back in 2008, because what I can remember is when I was trying to sell my home up in New York, real estate was dead. But in Florida, real estate was still booming. It took about 6 to 8 months for it to catch up. The same thing is happening with the collapse. It started out in Greece. It spread to Spain. It spread to Italy. It spread to Portugal, then to Cyprus. UK is feeling it. Germany, unemployment starting to go up. We can see how this is all affecting every single country right now. Now in the United States, of course, we have the illusion, but people are definitely starting to feel it. More and more people are becoming unemployed. People can't find work. More people are going on food stamps, and it's very hard for people to make ends meet. And how do we know this? Well, listen, the real disposable income fell the most in the last 40 years. And this goes on to say real disposable personal income drops by 0.2% from a month earlier and plummets by 2.7% from a year ago, the biggest collapse since the semi-depression in 1974. There is something wrong, because if you think about it and you think about all the propaganda coming out of the government, you would think that things are going well. Why? Well, the unemployment rate has come down to 6.7%, but people have less money. There are less sales in the stores. There are less sales in the real estate market. Why are retail, housing all declining? Why are people going why don't they have enough disposable income to pay for things? Something is happening. Now, again, we know during the holiday season, the sales of every single store was pretty much horrific. We see stores closing. As soon as the holiday season was over, we saw Macy's come out, we saw JCPenney come out, and most of these stores said, oh, we're closing stores, laying off people. Target said that we're laying off people. Aeropostale was out there saying they're closing about 175 stores. And we're seeing this happen more and more. Why? Because people don't have the money. But the question is, how did the people pay for this Christmas season? Well, it wasn't from the disposable income. Everyone went into their savings to buy gifts. Right now, the American people went through $46 billion in savings to fund the December purchases. And this goes on to say that finally, the data means that according to the BEA, in December, U.S. consumers funded some $46 billion in spending through burning down their savings. As of December 31st, 2013, total personal savings left are down to $495 billion. That's how they paid for this Christmas season, because those people who are unemployed, underemployed, had no money except whatever was in the savings, and they used whatever they had to pay for this Christmas season. And what we saw was they just bought a little bit, and this is why we saw sales decline. Now, coming into this year, 2014, What do you think is going to happen? Do you think sales are going to rise, or do you think they're going to quickly start to fall? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to get a lot worse, and they know this because Walmart is already out there saying, well, our sales are down and we're going to blame this on the weather. We're going to blame this on the food stamps. And again, they blame everything on the weather. What are they going to do in the spring? It's too warm. It's too sunny. It's ridiculous. The reason why this is happening is because people don't have the money. And my next question is they're blaming it on the food stamps. So you're trying to tell me this entire store of Walmart, all their sales are just based on food, and they lost that much just on food purchases from the food stamp program? It doesn't make sense. The reason why Walmart is not doing well, it's because people are not going out and buying the products in the store because they do not have the disposable income. It's that simple. Now, everyone was like, well, the reason why the brick and mortar stores aren't doing well during the holiday seasons and now is because everyone's buying online. That's what everyone is doing, and that's why the brick and mortar stores are doing poorly. Well, Amazon not doing well at all. If this was true, then Amazon would be, up. Sales would be up. Things would be great. People would have money. People are working. Everything would be fantastic. And guess what? They can't blame online sales on the weather. But revenue for Amazon of $25.59 billion, it missed the expectations of $26 billion, so it was down. Net sales was around 22%, the lowest in the year, below the 26% in quarter three. But if I remember correctly, unemployment was higher in Q3 than it was in Q4, because remember, in Q4, unemployment came down to 6.7%. Doesn't make sense. And if we look to last year, in 2012, the sales are worse. It was 23% a year ago, and now it's 22%. How can that possibly be? But if you look at Amazon, they employ about 117,000 people, up from 109 from a quarter ago, and sales are going the opposite direction. So what does that tell you? They're going to start laying off some people here. That's what's going to happen, because as time goes on, sales are not going to get better. People are going to have less and less money, because you have to remember the unemployment, inflation, GDP, all these calculations that the government and the Fed are throwing at you are completely manipulated. And what are we seeing with other retail stores? Well, let's take a look. Best Buy now is laying off another 950 people, and you're going to see later this year they will start closing more stores. Weatherford International, they are laying off 7,000 people. Sears in Canada, well, there's another 624 layoffs coming. This is not getting better, and the U.S. consumer sentiment dips again. So people are not feeling it. People understand that things don't seem right. They just can't put their finger on it because they are, a lot of people are still sleeping out there. They're not they haven't woken up to what's really going on, and they're listening to the propaganda of the Fed and the government, and they're saying, well, unemployment is down to 6.7%. I should be able to go get a job. And then they can't find a job. It doesn't make sense. What's going on here? I'm sending out my resume, and I have many, many people that I know that have been sending out resumes, and they get hardly any answers back from the resumes that they're sending out, and they're saying, what is going on here? And I tell them, unemployment is not 6.7%. It's around 30 or so percent. So this is why you're not getting the responses. Yes, they send it out and they get it from the headhunters and the consulting firms saying, oh, yes, give me your resume, and then they never hear from them again. There are no jobs out there. Now, here are some signs that 2014 will be the year of the super crash. And this is coming from Investment Watch blog. Here's the first trend. Market distortions because of QE appearing in the emerging markets. Well, yes, we're seeing that. 2, there are almost no buyers left in equities. 3, manipulation is entering the public debate. Currency markets, LIBOR, base metals, energy, and almost every single market has been manipulated. Number 4, banks are once again reporting losses. Several mega banks have been reporting losses in the last weeks. This is a repeat of 2008. It's the same thing happening again. The alarms of financial repression are deafening. The Bundesbank publicly commented that countries about to go bankrupt should draw on private wealth of their citizens through a one-off capital levy before asking other states for help. And I've discussed this before, and this is why all these bail-in documents were created, because they understand that banks have nothing left. They're insolvent. Where are they going to get the money? The government's already said we are not going to bail them out, so they have to do bail-ins, and that's why Cyprus was a bail-in. Now, Edward Snowden had an interview, and he was interviewed on German television, but the American media, the corporate media, the government media completely did not cover this at all. The reason why? Because they don't want the truth coming out. They rather have you listen to what they are saying about Snowden, that he's a traitor, that he needs to be put on trial. But he was looking at the situation, seeing what they were doing, that they were violating the Fourth Amendment of every single American person, and they were spying on every single person without their knowledge. And again, Edward Snowden came out and revealed this to everyone. When they put James Clapper on the stand under oath to Congress, he lied to the American people. Who is the traitor? Think about it. He completely lied under oath to the American people, saying, we are not spying on American people. But he's still in the government. I guess they keep all the liars in the government. Now, we understand that in Africa, the Chinese are pumping in billions of dollars into their infrastructure to mine natural resources, to help them build the infrastructure to get oil, and they're pumping in billions of US dollars into the region. They made Kenya the clearinghouse for the yuan, and now we see Nigeria and we see Zimbabwe now switching from the US dollar to the yuan and changing up their reserves. And we're going to see many other African nations do this as time goes on. We also know that France and the EU are in Mali because they need to control that area, because they have the third largest gold deposit in the world, and they want the gold there. We understand they're in Central Africa, and we understand the United States is in Sudan right now, and the United States has their puppet government in Sudan. The rebel side is the Chinese, and we can see what is happening. Basically, the United States, the central bankers, are at war with the Chinese, indirectly, of course, and they are not going to talk about peace. They are going to continually push Sudan so they can get the Chinese out of the area and take over the whole country. And right now, the South Sudan rebel leader is saying that the government wants to derail peace talks, and of course that's exactly what they want to do, because the central bankers, U.S. government, do not want peace. Yes, they talk about peace every place. We want peace in the Middle East. We want peace in Syria. We want peace in the Ukraine. We want peace in Sudan. We want peace everywhere. But don't listen to what they're saying. Look at their actions of what they are doing, because that is the clue of what's really going on. And we understand what is really going on here. Listen, they're talking to Iran about peace, about disarming their nuclear missile program, which didn't exist, and they're cutting down on the uranium, and this is all a smoke and mirror tactic so the central bankers can get into their banks and infiltrate them. This is why the IMF is visiting there. This is why they're a little bit worried about Putin visiting Iran. And we have to remember, this is all smoke and mirrors. And one little hiccup, guess what? The whole thing's going to fall apart, and they know this. And this is why they have kept the European missile shield. Of course, they said, we're putting this up because of Iran and their nuclear missiles, and our missiles are going to be ready, and they have it from Poland going down to Romania, and we're just being prepared for Iran. And right now, Russia, of course, said, well, if you're in these peace talks, why do you need the missile shield? Because they know that if something goes wrong, they need it there. And also, the missile shield is not just for Iran, it's for Russia. Of course, we know this. Now, the U.S. is sending warships, and they're going to depart for Spain on Friday in accordance with NATO plans to strengthen the ballistic missile defense in Europe. Of course, the USS Donald Cook will travel to its new home port in Spain as part of the Obama administration's phased adaptive approach for European missile defense. The United States is in the second of 3 planned phases for deploying anti-missile assets in Europe. The U.S. military next planned to deploy more capable, more sophisticated Standard Missile 3 interceptors in Romania and then into Poland. So we can see they are building up the military assets because we understand what is coming, and that is war. It will be World War III eventually when the entire system begins to collapse. The central bankers, the U.S. government, understand they need to cover up the entire thing, and they will start a war to cover it up. And this is their plan all along, and it has not changed at all. Now, there's a lot of propaganda out there right now saying that the military commanders continue to issue threats against the U.S. from Iran. Now, they're in peace talks, and everyone's talking about threats, that the military option is still on the table, that we would go into Iran, and they're continually going on with all this propaganda. And right now, Iran unveiled this week new anti-aircraft missile systems and a plan to confront U.S. naval forces ahead of Syria's of 8 new war games that are scheduled to begin in March. New anti-aircraft missile simulators have been installed at Iran's air defense base, according to a top Iranian military commander who said the systems would be used to train soldiers in the art of downing enemy aircraft. And of course, this is all propaganda coming out, building it up, because they realize if they cannot infiltrate the Iranian banks and put their oil on the U.S. dollar, the next move will be moving into Iran. They're going to move into Syria, and they're going to move into Iran. At least they're going to attempt to do this. We understand that Syria's peace talks are completely falling apart. The United States, along with their paid mercenaries, the militants, went there for one reason and one reason only: to get Assad removed from government. It is not working. So right now, negotiations ended with no progress at all. They have gone nowhere. There are no tangible results. So what does this mean? Well, this means they're going to have to take this to the next level. And we understand that John Kerry and other government officials were out there saying, and they're building up the case, Assad committed war crimes. Assad has hidden has a hidden cache of chemical weapons. He's creating biological weapons to put on missiles, and they're continually building this case, just like they did right before the false flag event in August. They kept saying that he's been using chemical weapons, and you saw him use chemical weapons, and of course we know it wasn't from Assad, it was from the rebels, and they did this before August, and then leading up to August they did it again, and they said, okay, they passed the red line and now we're going in. Well, they're doing the same exact thing right now. And U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said on Friday that Syria had no excuse for delays in ridding itself of chemical weapons and urged it to move very rapidly to allow them to be shipped out of the country. Every indication we have is that there is no legitimate reason why the removal is not happening now, Kerry told a news conference. We want the Syrian regime to live up to its obligation, and it's critical that very rapidly all those chemical weapons are removed from their 12 or so sites to the one site in the port to be prepared for shipment out of Syria. If President Assad failed to meet the obligations, Kerry said, the United States and its allies would meet to consider which options we deem necessary at the point to proceed forward. And they are right now basically saying, listen, if you can't get these out, and they are behind schedule because what's happening is the rebels are blocking them. They're very hard to get through the streets with these chemical weapons. It's very dangerous. They have all these weapons and they have to be disposed of. Now, there was an official report that came out saying that the militants unsuccessfully targeted a chemical arms shipment prior to its removal from Syria this week. You see what's happening right now. During the removal of the second consignment of chemical weapons on January 27, 2014, the convoy carrying them was attacked by militants, and the attack was defeated. This is they're telling the militants, the rebels, the paid mercenaries, make sure the timeline of the removal of the chemical weapons is slowed down, and make sure that you can capture some of these or delay them as much as you possibly can, because we are building the case to strike into Syria somehow, some way. And they've been building this up, and this is their entire plan. Now, we understand that they've tried a false flag event out in Syria. The American people, the Congress, no one bought it. The world said, we don't believe this. Where's your proof? They could never come up with any type of proof whatsoever that Assad actually used it. And then, of course, MIT came out and said, listen, this missile, where the government was positioned, there's no way they fired this. It didn't have the range. It must have come from the rebels. And we can see that, this is turning out to be true. This was a false flag event. Now, we understand they are becoming desperate. They are losing ground in the Middle East. They're going nowhere with Syria, and Iran is taking a very long time to iron out these peace talks, to infiltrate their banks, and they are losing a lot of time here, and they're becoming desperate because they know they need to get into these countries to prop up the U.S. dollar for a little bit longer. And they believe that if they get into these countries, everything will be all right. And we know it will not, because Russia and China back both of these countries. And this is why they just haven't stormed in and taken over these countries. So they need to look for a reason to get into Syria. They just can't go in there because it's a sovereign nation. So what are they doing? They had the peace talks because, again, they're showing you that we want peace, and they're going to come out and say that, Assad's government, they didn't cooperate, the peace talks ended, they couldn't do anything, we were there, we wanted peace, and look, and now, of course, Clapper, the liar who lied to the American people, is telling everyone that they're creating biological weapons. They have information that they're terrorists inside of Syria, that they're going to attack the United States. They are completely building this up. It's right in front of us. And we understand that the Super Bowl is going on. There is speculation that something might occur. We've also seen cyber attacks with the Syrian Electronic Army. They keep using them because they want everyone to know it's Syria, it's Syria, it's Syria. And we can see how this is playing right now. Now, today, we saw that the in the Super Bowl, in the hotels surrounding there were envelopes delivered with white powder. And again, this white powder turned out to be cornstarch or some type of baking soda. But the whole purpose of this was to keep everyone in fear, to make it seem like there is terrorists out there. Even though there wasn't, they want everyone to say, oh, whew, at least it wasn't terrorists this time. And they need to keep everyone completely scared about the situation. And this is why DHS is on ground, FEMA is on site, the FBI is there. They're having helicopters fly over the stadium because they want you to understand that terrorists can strike at any minute. Now, we also understand that they are building up the cyber attack scenario. And right now, Yahoo Mail was hacked into. Passwords and user user information was nabbed, and the reporting about 273 million accounts were kind of hacked into, but they're staying very quiet about this. And this is all a build-up to a cyber attack. They're convincing everyone that this is what is happening right now. These attacks are coming from all over the place. They can't be controlled. They can get into the countries, and they're making everyone aware of what's happening. They built it up about 2.5, 3 years ago, and they've been building, building, building. Again, we just saw Eric Holder out there telling us that the United States is completely not prepared. This is going to be a disaster when a cyber attack hits. The infrastructure is going to go down. Janet Napolitano was saying the same thing, and we can see where this is all leading. This is leading to the next event. Now again, will they get the green light, the go signal for the Super Bowl? We'll have to wait and see. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.